When the moon inexplicably veers off its orbit, human calculations project an imminent collision with Earth. NASA leads the effort to prevent a global catastrophe with the help of an unlikely team of individuals who encounter other forces at play. On January 12, 2011, 3 astronauts, Brian, Marcus, and Joe, banter while repairing a satellite in low Earth orbit. Their electronics start fluctuating, and they are suddenly attacked by a dark swarm. Brian tries to save Marcus from floating away, but fails and falls back to the shuttle's cargo bay. Brian makes his way to the shuttle cockpit, finding Joe unconscious. Vowing to bring Joe home, Brian notices a strange plume coming from the moon. A thick cloud of dust partly obscures what appears to be a dark swarm spinning on the lunar surface. 18 months later, on Earth, Brian's wife, Brenda, finds their son, Sonny, watching news footage. It shows Brian getting discredited for his testimony of a technological anomaly in the Mare Crisium crater, while Joe is unable to back him up. The news recaps how Brian was initially lauded for safely landing their shuttle without electronics but is now disgraced and in deep legal trouble. Brenda tries to console Sonny, but the boy is upset at his father's absence and their need to move house. 10 years later, at the University of California, Irvine, a man wearing glasses sneaks into the office of Dr. Arrowwood and logs in on the computer. Impersonating Arrowwood, he calls an observatory in Chile and asks a guy named Esteban for data on the moon's orbit to be emailed to the email address he gave him last time. He hastily hangs up at the sound of voices and hurries back outside. Later, at his diner job, the man receives the orbital distance data on his phone, swearing in shock upon reading it. He immediately makes a call, identifying himself as Dr. K.C. Hausman, and claims to have made a historic discovery. Demanding to be patched to the NASA director, he finds out he just called the NASA gift shop's number. The next day at dawn, Joe wakes up to a call from NASA. After getting dressed, she leaves her nanny, Michelle, to take care of her son, Jimmy, and sets off for work. Joe arrives at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where she is informed by the staff that the moon's orbit has shifted. Dismissive, Joe is then shown images of an unknown gaseous material spewing from the Mare Crisium crater. Later on, Casey arrives at his apartment, failing yet again to get in touch with Deputy Director Joe Fowler. Frustrated, he prints out his moon orbit data and cleans up his cat's urine on a newspaper page. Upon seeing an ad for Astronaut Day on it, he leaves for the observatory. In his apartment, Brian wakes up and bolts upon checking his phone, evading his landlord and riding away on his motorcycle. At the observatory, Casey tells the kids his theories of the moon being a megastructure. Brian, the actual speaker for the event, arrives and is immediately approached by Casey to share his moon findings. Brian dismisses Casey as crazy and gets him escorted out. As he's being dragged away, Casey throws his printouts to Brian, pleading with him to read them. Back at his place, Brian gets a call from his now ex-wife, Brenda, as they see Sonny on TV getting caught by police after a high-speed chase. He watches in anguish as the boy kneels down to get arrested. Days later, in a court hearing, Sonny gets deemed a flight risk and will need to spend a week in jail, much to Brian's ire. Meanwhile, Casey visits his mother, Elaine, who appears to have Alzheimer's. Elaine encourages her son about his discoveries, but his face falls when she forgets who he is. Back at the Johnson Space Center, Joe and NASA Director Albert Hutchings are told that the moon has entered an elliptical orbit. It'll pass the Roche limit in 3 weeks, resulting in city-sized chunks of the moon falling to Earth. They also discover that a giant hole has opened up at the Mare Crisium crater. Joe hatches a plan to get a crew on an STC-62 spacecraft to the moon. Just then, everybody in the room discovers that news of the moon's orbital shift was leaked to social media. Joe receives a call from her ex-husband and Air Force Chief of Staff, Doug Davidson, to whom she verifies the horrific news. At the courthouse, Brian sees Joe and Hutchings on TV, addressing the media about the moon's anomalous orbit. Around the same time, Tom, Brenda's new husband, is watching the news with their daughters when Brenda calls him. Tom suggests they go to Aspen, where the ground is higher, but Brenda balks at the thought of leaving Sonny behind. Later, NASA launches its lunar mission as news reports of mass panic, rampant looting, and large-scale migration stoke fear across the world. In his garage, Brian sees a news report about the moon being a megastructure, remembering Casey's theories. He later finds Casey's papers at the observatory dumpster with the help of a security guard. The papers lead Brian to Casey's website, inviting fellow megastructurists to meet at the LA Palm Hotel. In space, the STC-62 crew arrives at the Mare Crisium crater, dropping a probe down the mysterious hole. Meanwhile, Brian meets Casey at the LA Palm Hotel, where they discuss how the latter knew the moon was out of orbit. Casey explains that megastructures like Dyson spheres consist of a rigid shell powered by a white dwarf star in the center. He theorizes that something must have happened to the moon's power source that destabilized its orbit. Brian scoffs at the idea, but assures Casey he knows how it feels to have people dismiss him. At the Johnson Space Center, Mission Control monitors the probe reaching 24.5 kilometers deep into the hole when it starts coming back up. Suddenly, the swarm bursts out of the hole and breaches the STC-62 craft. Joe and the rest of Mission Control watch in horror as the swarm kills the 3 astronauts on board. Just then, Brian and Casey are alerted to ocean water flooding the city. While Brian gets the people to go upstairs, Casey is hit by a rush of water, instantly flooding the lobby. Brian jumps into the water to drag Casey, who cannot swim, back up the stairs. Back at the Johnson Space Center, Joe observes how the swarm reacted to the electronic signature of the capsule. She further notes how its very existence upends everything they know of the universe. Distressed, Hutchings cedes his position to her, seemingly abandoning hope. Joe smells a cover-up linking the current crisis to Brian's hearings, but the director merely suggests she visit Holdenfield, handing her his security clearance. Later, at a restricted NASA facility, Joe retrieves files on STX-136 Alpha, the last mission she and Brian flew. She sees Brian's helmet cam footage reveal the existence of the swarm. Then, Holdenfield, a former NASA official, interrupts Joe's research. When Joe asks why NASA lied about Brian's testimony, Holdenfield recalls the peculiar details of the Apollo 11 moon landing. The Apollo 11 crew apparently saw lights beneath the moon's surface but were told to keep it secret. His job was to make sure everyone who knew stayed silent, which was why NASA discredited Brian. Holdenfield mentions their only fighting chance, a project called Zulu X-Ray 7, or ZX-7, that was shelved for budgetary reasons. Joe notes that time is running out, but Holdenfield, feeling hopeless, apologizes before leaving. Later, Joe and the US military leadership disagree on how to solve the moon problem. She later pleads with Doug not to go with the nuclear option, which he denies. Doug asks Joe to take Jimmy and escape to Colorado, but she refuses to give up for the sake of their son. Back at the hotel, Casey is awed at Brian's encounter with the alien tech, but Brian laments losing Marcus. He adds that, despite saving Joe in the shuttle, he ended up losing his family on top of the public disgrace. At the Fowler residence, Joe prepares Jimmy and Michelle to leave for the Colorado bunker. While Joe is reassuring an anxious Jimmy, the boy's inquiry about sending more rockets to the moon gives her an idea. Joe finds out from Doug that ZX-7 is a prototype EMP device. Doug points out the lack of craft to transport the device to space, but Joe disagrees. At the flooded Palm Hotel, soldiers find and retrieve Brian, who insists on bringing Casey with him. 3 hours later, Brian and Casey meet Joe at the Johnson Space Center, but not without the former friends arguing. They make their way to the mission control room, where Brian and Casey are shown the Mary Krisham tunnel and footage of the swarm. Joe reveals their plan to take the EMP device to the moon to destroy the swarm in a craft deactivated of electronics to avoid detection. She then pleads with Brian, who was able to fly a shuttle without electronic aid, to fly the mission. He hesitates, saying all space shuttles are now museum pieces, but Joe indicates there's one in LA they can use. Brian finally agrees but sets one condition. En route to the shuttle museum, Joe assures Brian that Sonny will be meeting them at Vandenberg Air Force Base. They later find the shuttle Endeavour vandalized but intact. Later at Vandenberg, Brian and Joe get briefed on the modified remote-controlled ZX-7 EMP bomb that Doug sent them. They also get to use a Chinese-made lander to carry the bomb, reworked to operate without electronics. While Brian reviews the mission with the crew, Sonny arrives escorted by Joe's team. Sonny berates his dad for working with NASA, but Brian defends his chance to keep protecting his loved ones. While Casey chats with the NASA techs, an earthquake suddenly rocks the entire Vandenberg base. The quake subsides, and Casey immediately realizes the moon's increased mass is causing seismic activity as it orbits ever closer to Earth. At the launch pad, Brian and Joe discover that one of the rocket's engines is unusable. Joe writes off the launch, but Brian walks off. Furious, a disheartened Joe addresses everyone at the base, canceling the mission and ordering an immediate evacuation to the Colorado bunker. Sonny thanks Brian for getting him out of jail as they prepare to leave. Later, Casey tells Joe that the moon now has 80% of the Earth's gravitational pull. She tells them the mission is over, but something on the data catches her eye. Joe re-enlists Brian's help to fly the shuttle right when the moon is above them, adding that the increased gravity can give them a boost. She also volunteers as a flight navigator, while Casey, who calculated their launch trajectory, is also recruited for the mission. The two families say their goodbyes, and after Joe puts a satellite phone in Jimmy's bag, Sonny gets into a truck with Michelle and the boy en route to Colorado. Afterward, Casey calls his mother, who is being evacuated along with his cat. Brian, Joe, and Casey suit up for the launch as water on the coast recedes rapidly. Just then, the gigantic moon rising over the horizon brings a massive gravity wave, poised to wipe out the base. Brian launches the shuttle just as the waves crash over Vandenberg. Worried, Sonny steps out of the truck with Jimmy and Michelle, seeing the Endeavour blast out of the towering water toward the sky. He, Jimmy, and Michelle get back in the vehicle and outrun the wave just in time. As the Endeavour flies toward the moon, one of the boosters starts losing thrust. So Brian decides to leave the shuttle flying on pure momentum and orders Joe to detach both boosters to avoid crashing down. At the same time, they get rid of the main tank. Joe notes the shuttle losing speed, but velocity picks back up as the moon's gravity assist kicks in, carrying the shuttle to low Earth orbit. At nightfall, Sunny, Michelle, and Jimmy fall victim to looters who take their truck and Jimmy's bag containing the satellite phone from Joe. Sunny thinks he can get another vehicle, and they start to walk. Back in the Endeavor, the three make their way toward the debris-filled moon using analog instruments. They arrive near the Mare Crisium hole, where Brian takes the lander and deploys the rover carrying the EMP bomb. Once he returns to the Endeavor, Brian prepares to trigger the bomb when the swarm appears, ignoring the rover and going straight for the shuttle. As the swarm engulfs the Endeavor, Brian deactivates the remote trigger and Casey's phone by smashing them on a panel. The swarm stops, and then goes back down the crater hole. The crew figures out that the swarm only attacks when it detects organic life forms in an electronic environment. Joe reminds them of the military's impending nuke launch, so Brian decides to fly the lander inside the moon. Back on Earth, Sunny, Michelle, and Jimmy meet Tom in Aspen, where they later reunite with Brenda and her daughters, Lauren and Nikki. An evacuation announcement warns the residents about breathable air starting to dissipate. Sunny informs them of the military bunker, and Tom prompts the family to leave with an idea in mind. In space, Brian, Joe, and Casey get on the lander and retrieve the rover before flying inside the moon. Meanwhile, in Aspen, Sunny and Tom find some oxygen tanks in an abandoned fire station. 20 kilometers deep into the moon tunnel, Brian turns on the lander's lights to reveal multiple giant rings surrounding a blinding white core. They fly right at the edge of the core, which Casey jubilantly confirms to be a white dwarf star. They continue flying through the megastructure's expanse, and soon after, they find the swarm. As they fly straight for the dark mass to deploy the rover, the lander starts steering itself away from the swarm. The lander almost gets eaten, but a green beam pulls them into a giant doorway and shuts out the alien aggressor. In Aspen, the same looters who took the truck from Sunny's group are now trying to take their oxygen tanks. So Sunny uses his gun and threatens to shoot their leader, forcing the others to drop their weapons and return Jimmy's bag to Tom. Then, Sunny and Tom go back to their SUV with the oxygen tanks, but moments later, the looters chase them in their trucks. Sunny drives their SUV through the snow and wonky gravity while Tom gets into a shootout with the looters. As Sunny dodges moon debris left and right, a floating truck wreck hits one of the vehicles chasing them. The SUV barely makes it over a chasm with a gravity-assisted jump while the remaining looters crash into the rock face. Afterward, Doug contacts Sunny on the satellite phone and warns him of an impending military strike, also learning that Joe is with Brian in outer space. Then, he talks to Jimmy and apologizes for not being with him, but the boy reassures his father that Joe will save them. Putting on their oxygen masks, Sunny and the others start making their way to a reinforced tunnel in the distance. Back inside the moon structure, Joe and Casey wake up to breathable air and step outside the lander to a massive alien hangar. As they call for a missing Brian, the swarm pounds on the gate. Then the two are guided by lights to a doorway. Somewhere, Brian sees an apparition of a younger Sunny, who explains that he is a construct from Brian's mind. The Sunny construct reveals that a hyper-advanced civilization created him and the human race billions of years ago. The construct recalls to Brian how their advanced ancestors expanded into space habitats, evolving beyond social conflicts and wars. They created what was essentially an AI that managed their daily lives until it went rogue and turned on its creators. The rogue AI took the form of a nanotech swarm, inciting war and hunting down all biological life forms and self-preservation. The ancestors then built megastructures that traveled the galaxy to try and find a safe home. The swarms eventually destroyed all but one megastructure, the moon. The moon, empty of any living organism to avoid detection, found the solar system, which was one of the only suitable places to initiate the creation of a new inhabitable planet. It then seeded the newborn planet, Earth, with the ancestors' DNA birthing new life. Afterward, the Sunny construct, now in the form of teenage Sunny, enlists Brian's help in luring the swarm away from the moon's core so it can return to its stable orbit. Joe and KC find Brian, who explains his plan to save the moon and the history of their ancestors' struggle against the swarm. The three find the lander repaired and the EMP device upgraded, emboldening them to take on the swarm and prevent it from suffocating the power core. Back on Earth, Tom sacrifices his oxygen mask for Nikki and convinces the girl to keep walking to the tunnel. On the moon, Brian leads the swarm across the hangar into the path of the ancestors' station battleships. The ship's cannons start firing on the swarm automatically, causing it to crash in a fiery explosion and letting the lander get away. Meanwhile, Nikki makes it to the tunnel and tells the others about her father. Sunny decides to go back for Tom, but he gets knocked away by a rock slide caused by the moon's falling debris, and Michelle goes to his rescue. As the moon enters the atmosphere, raining down city-sized chunks on the surface, the US military prepares to launch their nukes. However, Doug withdraws his key from the launch console, believing Joe can still save them. Back on the moon, Brian tells the others he'll act as bait for the swarm and stay in the rover with the EMP. As Joe argues with Brian, Casey goes to the rover and closes the hatch behind him. Brian tries to dissuade Casey, but the latter tells him it's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. Casey thanks Brian for believing him and detaches the rover from the lander to meet the oncoming swarm. As the dark mass envelops the rover, Casey comes face to face with a nanotech menace. He then detonates the EMP bomb, finally destroying the swarm. Back on Earth, Doug and his colleagues die as the bunker caves in. Michelle rescues Sunny from under a fallen tree, and they outrun a massive wave of debris to jump inside the tunnel. At the same time, Joe flies the lander out of the moon and parachutes down in the space capsule onto Earth's surface. Slowly, the moon drifts away from the atmosphere. Sunny and Michelle reunite with Jimmy, Brenda, and her daughters. They eventually come out of the tunnel to daylight, and Jimmy is contacted by Joe. Brian and Joe ponder their successful mission, and they reconcile as a helicopter tracks the space capsule. Later, the helicopter carrying Brian and Joe land in front of Sunny and the others, and the families reunite with a bittersweet tinge. They look up to see the moon receding in the sky, debris swirling about the exposed megastructure. Inside the moon, Casey appears as a construct, as the construct of his mom carrying his cat talks to him. The Elaine construct tells Casey he's part of the moon now, having his consciousness uploaded to it. Then, his mom's construct invites him to get started.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.